Something that I really didn't have any experience with. I've been playing around with Cortana, and I found that Cortana is actually, she has brain damage. I mean, I don't really care much for so-called personal assistants. Let's try it out. Open Microsoft Word. Welcome back to Fast Gadgets. So on this episode, I want to talk about a little project that I'm doing. You may have already seen the first episode in the project, which was a video with Gavin where we did an unboxing of his AMD A6 HP laptop. So this is what I challenged myself to do. Now, as you know, I'm primarily a Linux user. I've become very used to using Linux. And recently I bought a new laptop, and my video is available if you haven't seen it. So I bought the Yoga Lenovo 910. It had Windows 10 on it by default, so I thought, why not get to know Windows 10 a little bit better than I already do? And I've only used it for the basics, so I decided it was time for me to dig in and learn Windows 10 better than I do already. So I decided to give myself a 7-day challenge, and in those 7 days I was going to do everything I normally do in Linux or in Mac in Windows 10, and I was only going to use a Windows 10 machine. And I'm going to tell you, with the preliminaries here, I really miss my Linux. I did set this system up as a dual boot so that I could experiment and learn about dual boot setup in the Yoga 910, but the applications that I use, I've definitely become very used to Linux, so it's been really tough on me. And I'll just give you a couple of examples for right now to whet your appetite, but later on I'll shoot a more thorough video on my experience with Windows 10. The first problem that I had that really doesn't have to do with Windows 10 per se was the Lenovo Yoga 910 needed a BIOS update so that I could reduce the fan noise on the system, and I am recording on the system right now, so if you are curious, I do have the system in tent mode so that the camera is facing directly to me instead of up my nose so that you get a better angle. And really not a problem. If I need to, I can just bring up the keyboard and do what I need to do on the virtual keyboard. I try to have my stuff set up and ready, that way when I'm shooting I don't really need the keyboard. Now the only thing about that is I tried to flip my computer in Linux, and KDE does not see the rotation, so whatever the sensor is in the laptop isn't working in KDE, and KDE has become my default desktop. And that's another video for another time, because we're talking about Windows 10 today. I set up the dual boot. I got Linux, Fedora 25 dual booting with Windows. Everything was working peachy, and I decided to go ahead and do the BIOS update. The BIOS update blew away the UEFI boot option for Linux, and I didn't want to reinstall Fedora 25, so normally it wouldn't be a big deal, but because this is a very custom machine and the Yoga 910 really isn't too kind to Linux, it actually took me quite a few days to figure it out. So watch for my videos. I'll be releasing a video after I do my Windows 10 project here shortly, which tells you how to get dual boot back with pretty much any flavor of Linux on the Yoga 910, and I'm assuming it probably would work also for other newer model Yogas. So anyway, that was the first problem I had. Not really a Windows 10 issue. First thing is, overall, I mean, for the basics, Windows 10 is no different than any other operating system. As far as browsers go, not an issue. I, of course, installed Firefox, but sometimes I do use the Edge browser. I found that I'm very reluctant, of course, to install Flash, and I had a copyright well, it wasn't a takedown, it was a copyright infringement on one of my videos, and I needed to dispute it. When you go to the dispute page, for whatever reason, your video won't play in HTML5, so you can click the link to play the area that you want to play so that you can see what music was infringing. And of course I couldn't get it to play, so I launched Edge and it actually played it just fine. And I could see which music was infringing. And to make a long story short regarding that, it was my fault because the music was Creative Commons non-commercial attribution and I missed the non-commercial part. So now, as far as using the system, I was going to say I didn't really like the email app, and this is kind of funny. I linked all of my email accounts to the Microsoft email reader, email program in Windows 10, and I was looking at the list of emails, how it was populating, and how I really liked the way Google separated out what they consider advertising emails versus social media emails, and then it has your main inbox. And I kind of like that, and I've become used to it. So they all kind of threw in a big jumble. Well, I wouldn't have seen the copyright infringement email more than likely in the Google box setup inbox because it would have went into social media, and I get hundreds of those every day. So it would have been buried. It just happened to be right in front of my face using the Microsoft tool. So there's things to be said about how it organizes, and so I'm going to experiment a little bit and see what I can do. Maybe I can make some changes so that I can view it the way I like, what I'm used to. I decided that I was going to use Adobe Premiere, and this has been quite a learning experience for me. So this is Adobe Premiere Professional, and it's a little bit sluggish right now because I'm recording in OBS, and that's another topic of discussion. Keep in mind that I'm not just evaluating Windows 10, I'm evaluating the entire environment that is offered in Windows 10. So, an OS is not the only thing you need applications too. Very interesting. As an editor goes, it's not bad, but I'm gonna confess, and I'm sure I'm gonna tick off the Adobe lovers, but I just can't believe people pay the amount of money they pay for this. I actually had it crash on me twice, or was it 3 times? I can't remember. So it crashed and it resumed. One time I lost about 2 to 3 minutes of work, which was a little depressing. Overall, it wasn't a big issue, but I was a little surprised that it would crash on Windows 10, and I'm sure a couple of you will say, well, Mark, you got to try it in Mac. So I will definitely give it a try in Mac, but I would think that if I was going to do that, I would just go for the Apple editing software. So I don't think I would do Premiere, and this is just preliminary stuff, so my opinion may change. Another thing that I found really interesting is looking at the flow of editing and how the different facets work here in Premiere. It's very much like Kdenlive, except Kdenlive is much more efficient in my opinion. I've used Adobe Premiere before, years back, and I've used plenty of Adobe products like Photoshop and several of their other products, and Adobe products just have their way of doing things, and to me a lot of it is not logical. I had quite a bit to learn to go into the music, for example, and create some keyframes so that I could actually alter the levels of the sound depending on what clip I was on. So that took me quite a bit to figure out. I definitely don't blame that on Windows 10, and I'm not saying Adobe Premiere is a bad product at all. All I'm saying is I would have a learning curve, not a huge one, obviously. I was able to edit a 20-minute video and get things going very rapidly. There was one big problem though, and I'm sure some of you have encountered it. The audio was out of sync when I imported my video files, and what I found out was that the video files come from my Galaxy Note 4, and they have a variable frame rate, which really wreaks havoc on Premiere Pro. So the audio quickly comes out of sync, and by the end of the video it's really bad. And I tried different imports and nothing worked, and the only thing that I found that actually worked, which I'm sure some of you have had to do, is use Handbrake and go ahead and re-import the videos, and then on the export, the only thing that I really changed was constant frame rate. So by default it's on peak frame rate, so I changed it to constant frame rate, and I did have to re-render the videos. Somewhat of a problem because it takes a lot of extra time. Here's my beef. Okay, I know this is a pro product, so I'm thinking that's exactly why it's happening. But if you look back, let me go back. Look how long this has been a problem. 2014, 2013, 2016, 2013, 2011. I mean, how is it after all these years Adobe can't get it right? And this is why I don't like Adobe products. They don't want to, and they don't care. And the reason they don't care is because this is a quote-unquote professional software suite. That means you're going to be using professional cameras with CFR, constant frame rate. And if you don't, it's on you. Well, you know, the problem with that is everybody else's software works correctly. The ones that I've used: Kdenlive, iMovie, Windows Movie Maker. There's another one that I use for Windows whose name escapes me right now that actually worked really well. Never had a problem with it. None of them ever have a problem syncing the audio. Only Adobe Premiere. And for at least the last 8 years, since 2011, it's been an issue with Adobe, and it hasn't been fixed, and it doesn't look like it ever will be. The other thing, I guess, which is kind of good, is that, like I say, the flow is I think Kdenlive really followed Adobe when they created their workflow, and except they improved on it, in my humble opinion. All the setup in Kdenlive is much nicer, and it's open source, and I think it's easier to use, and I do not yet see any features in this editor that is worth you know, $20 a month, I think is what I could pay as an educational user. No, I just wouldn't do it. But for what it is, I mean, it worked pretty well. I was able to intuit how to get things working, so it wasn't too bad. My Bluetooth mouse is misbehaving. I do like some of the flow of Windows. You know, there's always features I like. Case in point, right now I've got it in tent mode, so if I wanted to, I could stick it in tablet mode. And I really like... I always hate when I go to demonstrate something in Windows and say I like it, and it doesn't work right. I know it's slow because OBS is running, but let's try this again. Yeah, really slow. And it shouldn't be. This is a brand new Kaby Lake i7. I mean, that's just despicable. Anyway, I've got OBS running down here. OBS is another issue. I know people really, really like OBS, but the second time that I ran it and did a capture and I stopped the recording, FFmpeg continued running in the background and was taking up 40% of my CPU, and that's absolutely insane. I just couldn't believe that. Curious what your thoughts are. But it's not very efficient. Now, I used to use that tool, Ice Cream video recorder. The problem I have with it is when you buy it and they tell you one-time fee for life, that's on specifically 2 computers. And guess what happens if you get rid of your 2 computers? That's right, you got to buy another license. So I decided to give OBS a shake, and overall it's fine, but you can see the huge amount of lag. Let me try that again. Okay. So quite a bit of lag because of OBS. So I'm just thinking if I wanted to record live, if I was doing gaming or something like that, I would be really disappointed in that incredible amount of lag. So let's have a look here real quick. Can we not bring up Task Manager in tablet mode? Well, we'll switch back. So let's see how busy the computer is right now. And I get it, it's doing a screen cap. OBS itself not too busy. Just saw there's FFmpeg. So I guess, not too bad. Right now it's hovering at around 25-26%. And I have done some tweaks, so it is doing hardware rendering instead of software rendering, which greatly improved it. Before I did that, it was literally up there at like 50%, so it was a lot more busy. Something that I really didn't have any experience with, I've been playing around with Cortana, and I found that Cortana is actually, I think she has brain damage. I mean, I don't really care much for so-called personal assistants. Let's try it out. Open Microsoft Word. Well, that's my fault. We're going to try that again. Open Microsoft Word.
Sure thing. Starting Microsoft Word.
Okay, so that one was pretty simple. Let's try one a little more complicated. Open Yes.
All right. Which one do you want? Microsoft Solitaire Collection.
Open microphone settings.
Which one? Microsoft Solitaire Collection or Microsoft Edge?
Start over.
All right. Start which app?
Microphone settings.
Start which app?
You're kind of dumb, aren't you?
Sorry. Start which app?
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm not too worried about AI computers taking over the universe anytime soon. Anyway, let's try one more time. Open microphone settings.
Okay. Opening microphone privacy settings.
Didn't really want the privacy settings, but at least this time it gave me something. Before, it did not open any microphone settings. It actually, popped up Bing and went and searched for microphone settings on Bing. So this kind of thing I just don't see a use for. Usually what I do is just disable Cortana, and the only type of searching I ever do is usually on the menu itself. So I might search for something here. See if we can get our keyboard to come up. Just to open a tool and launch it. So I really didn't find Cortana very useful before, and I still don't, even though supposedly Cortana is getting smarter and can help me remember appointments. I'll experiment with it more and see if it's anything worthwhile, but I kind of hate to get to the point where I find Cortana useful, since I spend most of my time on Linux. Most of the apps that I needed I was able to install. So I've got Handbrake as my editor right now. I'm using Premiere, but it's only a trial, so I've only got like 3 more days. But I do have another one that I'm trying that I actually have a longer trial of. And since I don't feel like typing, open Adobe Premiere Elements.
Sure. Here's Adobe Premiere Elements 15.
I think that's the height of all laziness, isn't it? You're sitting at your computer. I don't feel like typing. I just wanted to launch the app. Well, anyway. The funny thing about Adobe Premiere Elements, and apparently this has been the case for years, once again, they haven't bothered to set it up for 4K, so, or any high DPI for that matter. And by the way, normally it's much, much faster. So while OBS is running, things are kind of a little slow. If anybody has any tips on settings in OBS that make it much more streamlined or efficient, I'd appreciate hearing them. It's something new for me, so I'd always find your tips useful. So if you have any, throw them at me. Anyway, while we're waiting for Premiere Elements to open, it's not the same interface at all as Adobe Premiere, which did surprise me. I thought maybe the interfaces would be identical, there just would be less features, and that's not the case. So it's completely different, and on this 4K resolution screen, there's, you know, elements of it that are super duper tiny, super difficult. Okay, so here is the Adobe Premiere Elements interface. I'm seeing things that are a little bit similar, like this wasn't, but I do like having a render here. I think that's kind of cool, because when I'm ready I can just go ahead and do a render. It's got a quick menu here, which I think is useful. You can just throw the media that you want in, and you can see some of the text here, how tiny it is. You know, I think I can live with that. I've seen worse. And I'm recognizing a couple of the menus. So I'm going to play around with this one, and if it works nicely, you know, because I really don't need anything too fancy, I might pay I think it's $60 or something like that to have a standby video editor and a one-time fee, which I really like in the event that I need to go into Windows and do some work. I think that'd be awesome. I haven't experimented with any of these tools over here yet, so it'll all be new for me. But as soon as the Adobe Premiere CC expires, I'll just switch over to this one, and if it's worthwhile, I'll probably go ahead and spend the $60. That way I have it. What else? Not a whole lot installed yet. I've installed, let's see, VLC, Premiere, both Elements and CC. Installed Office, Firefox, SpeedFan, because I realized I needed to monitor heat and see how things were going on the system, because I was really curious if I was overdoing it with the rendering. Personally, you know, if this is really going to be a MacBook killer, I'm expecting it to do better or equal to what a Mac can do. So eventually here it should give me some information. I have two applications on here, and right at the moment I can't remember which one I was using. I don't think I was using this one for temp. We'll find out. One of them would give me the wrong temperature, and the other was giving me the correct temperature readings. Yeah, this one's correct. So I haven't found out what the operating range for the processor is yet on this system, specifically the Yoga 910, and I really can't imagine it'll be a problem. I hear the fans running right now, and the cool thing about it in tent mode, you know, the heat just rises, so it's also using convection. You can feel the heat coming right off it, and it's a little bit busy right now. Doesn't seem to be much of a problem. I did notice that this is supposed to go up to turbo to 2.7, but if we cruise back into Task Manager and we go to Performance, make a liar out of me. Check that out. What? The speed was actually, it has been consistently 3 gigahertz or more, And I think I know why that is. No, I'm not in tablet mode. I would expect that if I was in tablet mode, but not in desktop mode. I'm not sure why. Maybe it just doesn't need to be going very fast right now. Yeah, here it says maximum speed 2.9 gigahertz, but it was cruising at 3.06, 3.10 gigahertz. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd because supposedly that's the maximum speed, yet I know it's supposed to have a burst rate, but it was definitely up there. So whatever, if this is what works for it, I'm good with it. As long as it's not overheating. That's my only concern. Anything else to add? Well, I think that's about it for now. But anyway, I will be making some videos on Windows 7 and trying to experiment and learn all I can learn and see if I'm missing anything. Incidentally, I found that the store is actually far better than it used to be. I don't know what your experience has been. Let's cruise over to apps. And find one I don't have that I actually need. Well, I thought about downloading Instagram. So I'm going to go for Get. It's very interesting that the processor is running at such a slow speed. The only thing I can think of is because I'm in tent mode. I'll bet that's what it is. I vaguely recall that being an issue with my Lenovo Yoga 2 Pro. That would explain why everything's slow. It's not OBS's fault. So, yeah, I guess we're finding out issues with Windows 10. I'm going to go back and see. Yeah, speed is still pretty slow. I think I know how to fix that. I'll check into it. Right now it's not a big issue, but depends how good my render is when I get all done. I hope I didn't waste my time. But anyway, before, I would have a problem downloading stuff from the store. Half the time it wouldn't download. It might not install correctly. And those were issues. Speaking of downloads, 2 times I've been held hostage by updates, which has been a big issue. So I go to shut down the computer, which is very rare. Of course, normally I just close the lid, but I decided for whatever reason to reboot, actually usually because I install a program. I do the reboot and it tells me there's going to be updates installed. One time it took about 3 minutes, the other time it took about 15 or 20 minutes. So that was a little bit annoying and I had to work around that. So app is installed. I'll set it up later, but opening it up seems to come up just fine. So I think the store is vastly improved, and that's going to bode well for Microsoft and user experience. If they truly want to get people completely involved with Windows 10, where they're actually considering getting a phone with Windows 10 or a tablet, performance is going to be an issue, and of course the quality of the store, meaning how well it runs and what kind of titles they have available. So if you do have a suggestion for a game that you think will run on here, keeping in mind it only has Intel 620 graphics, let me know. I'm really not inclined to spend a whole bunch of money, but if you've got a favorite that you like, definitely hit me up in the comments and let me know. Anyway, that's enough for now. Hope you enjoyed it. Sorry it was kind of rambly, but just wanted to get my 2 cents out there about what I was doing with Windows 10 and what I think about it so far. Also, the Yoga 910 laptop. I'm going to have a couple more videos out about this because I've learned more about this product as I've been using it. I've had no real doubts, so everything I need is working the way I was hoping, and I'm finding it very enjoyable. It's nice and light. Definitely more speedy than my other system, so very interesting system. Very, very good purchase to me anyway. And if you were considering getting a Yoga 910, I would recommend it, but do the BIOS update before you set up dual boot. Save yourself a mega headache. Trust me on this one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time on Fast Gadgets.